Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the Max Revenue Show. This is our special series called The Diary of a New Producer, where we go behind the scenes and give you a look into the life of Ian Cognito, our new producer that started 9 weeks ago. And it's going to give you the good, the bad, the ugly of everything that he is going through trying to build his book back to $1 million. So let's get into this, folks. This is week number 9. All right, 3 things I'm going to talk about in this episode. First, I'm going to talk about your biggest competition. Second thing is what to do when people ghost you, right? How to approach it, your mindset. And the last is what is the purpose of our follow-up later pipeline? All right, let's get into this. So, who is your biggest competition as a broker? It's not that big national agency down the street or that super micro niched producer that's coming after your business. It's yourself. Right? And you've heard this before, I'm not the first to say it, but it's the person in your head, right? Are you limiting yourself? So Ian and I had a great talk this week, and he actually was inspired by a post that we did on our LinkedIn, and he said, hey man, I read that post that y'all did, and it got me thinking. And the post was about basically how us as producers, we limit ourselves and the size of accounts that we want to go after. And so he uses Insurance X-Date, right, to do his prospecting and as a CRM, and he was setting his threshold for premium accounts on the work comp at like 10,000 in premium, and he was capping it at like 100,000, right, for work comp premium only. And he said, man, I read that post. I said, why? And he said to himself, why am I putting a cap on it, right? Like, why can't I go and write bigger accounts? And why am I starting so low? The whole reason I moved to a new agency was to be able to go upstream and to write bigger accounts. Why am I limiting myself, right? So it was an awesome realization by Ian, and I just encouraged him and said, yeah, exactly. Now there's some things to think through if you want to go upstream. That, you don't want to only go after whales, at least in my opinion, especially as a new young producer, right? It can be a long sales process. There's a lot more competition. Your competition is usually better in those spaces. However, you also don't want to limit yourself and not go after those bigger accounts just out of fear, right? So stop limiting yourself, right? When it comes to the size of accounts that you want to work on or the territory that you want to work on. Find your ideal prospect you want to go after in terms of size, and then go after it confidently, right? And also don't limit yourself if you're at a smaller agency, okay? I left a large national for a regional carrier or agency. And I can sometimes fall into that trap too, right? It's like, oh, that account, they're only going to go with the 5 biggest brokers in the world, right? I have no chance. You'd be surprised. This is a true story. I stumbled into an account. They're probably paying, say, $2 billion a year construction company. They're with a mom and pop agency out of Michigan, and they were down here in Texas, right? This was a couple years ago. So you'll surprise yourself. The longer you do this game, you'll find out that there's not a whole lot of difference between the really big guys, small and the medium-sized deals, right? And so much of it comes down to you and your team and the capabilities of your team and the people around you that would be supporting your clients. So that's my message, is don't limit yourself. Don't be afraid to call those people. We've talked about this before too, is when you're calling CEOs or CFOs, it can be intimidating. Don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. They're just normal people like you and I, okay? Just remember that, right? You are your biggest competition, okay? Second thing that Ian and I talked about was kind of the mindset to approach when people ghost you, right? And this happens a lot, let's face it. If you don't get ghosted, you're not out there making cold calls. That's just the reality. I don't care what you say, everyone has been ghosted or will be ghosted. But here was something interesting he realized and said to me, he's like, yeah, instead of getting frustrated, I thought to myself, he's like, the guys at Zoom Info reached out to me about signing up for a thing. I said I was interested, and then I've kind of actually been silent the last 2 months with them. I've just been busy, I have other priorities, and he's like, that's probably what people are doing to me too. So, doesn't mean they don't like me, they hate me, I gave a bad presentation, doesn't mean anything, actually. At this point, we don't know what it means. It just means that they have other priorities. So take that, and then use your time wisely, right? Move on. Put them in your CRM system. Follow back up in a timely process. When the timing is right, guess what? They'll reach out to you if you've impressed them enough. So I think sometimes we can get so down in the rut of follow-up, got to do 20 follow-ups and get on top of these people and make sure nothing falls through the cracks. And there is tons of money in the follow-up. You got to follow up, but you can't you got to do it strategically, and you want to be wise with your time. And you also don't want to be just annoying, right? I mean, we've all gotten those 20 follow-ups in 2 weeks. That's just unnecessary. So I thought it was a really cool realization of Ian putting himself in the prospect's mind, right? Having empathy, and then realizing, applying it to his own life, his own situation when he's been the buyer. And I think this serves us well for everything that we do. You know, put yourself in the buyer's shoes. If you have a script you have that you really think is awesome, you have a sales proposal that you think is awesome, instead of going out there and presenting and saying, yeah, this sounds awesome, take a second, put yourself in the buyer's shoes and say, would they think this sounds awesome? Because that's really what matters, right? That's what matters, right? And that's why we start in our presentations with the them, us, fit kind of style, right? It's all about them first, and then it's about us and how we can help them. So, and the last thing here, and then I'll wrap this episode up, is the purpose of the follow-up later pipeline. If you've been a fan of the Max Revenue Show, or you've subscribed to our course, read our newsletter, you know our podcast, you know we talk about the importance of a follow-up later list. And what that means essentially is, as you're making cold calls, you're going to get people that say, bad timing, call me back in 3-4 weeks. You put them on a follow-up later list, right? Now, the whole reason of this list is to keep you excited. Insurance is freaking tough. You know what I mean? You'll have days where you make 100 calls and talk to 10 people and get all no's, right? Or a week where that happens. So you want to get excited about the small victories, and that's what the follow-up later list kind of is. It's essentially a bunch of small victories, and then when you look back at the end of the week, it's like, okay, I set no meetings, but man, I have 4 follow-up laters. That's kind of cool. These will all lead to really good results next month, okay? But on the flip side of that, as much as I want you to get excited about it, you can't rest on that, right? Because if I'm being real with you, a lot of those follow-up laters will flake out. Me and Ian were talking, I said probably 75% will flake out, right? So at the end of a month, if you get, let's just say you get 5 follow-up laters a week, and then at the end of the month you have 20. Odds are 15, 16, 17, 18 of those will probably flake out, right? Or maybe you just get pushed back and say, something changed. And so you might only have an opportunity to do due diligence and to actually get in a first meeting with 3 of those 20, right? But that's fine. That's totally fine. You take those ones who didn't pan out, follow up with them next year again, back to the CRM basics. But then focus in on those ones that are really interested. So know that, and that's just kind of the nature of things. That's just how things are. So there's no reason to get annoyed of it. Just like when someone ghosts you, stop getting annoyed of it. That's just how things are. That's how people are. Just accept that. Doesn't mean you don't care, put your best effort in, but that's what you do. You put your best effort in, and then you let it go. It's out of your control, right? So on this follow-up later list, if you get a really nice pipeline of follow-up laters, get excited, but don't get too excited where it's like, I can stop prospecting, I can play golf for the next 3 weeks. No, it's just a good way to celebrate the small victories, to keep you excited and motivated, but it also does hone you in too. So if you have on that follow-up later list, let's just say next month you're going to call it 150 prospects. Well, you have 20 that said call me back. Those are the 20 that you really hone in on, right? Maybe you do a drop in on them in between. Maybe you send them an email, a Starbucks gift card, whatever, but you get more focused in on those ones. And then as they kind of fall off the list, you work in other ones. So, hey, that's all I got for you this week. Ian's doing great. Listen to our podcast, the most recent episode. It's here on YouTube. It's also on Spotify. I gave it an 8-week update of where Ian's at, how he's doing, how he's progressing. So check it out there if you want to know more about the numbers specifically. But I hope you guys found this valuable. If you did, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss future episodes. If you have any thoughts in the comments, you want to hear something, or you have questions about Ian's journey, let me know. Check us out on LinkedIn, check our course out, all that good stuff. We appreciate all your support. Go get them.